Now, from the Signature Bank Studios.
Only the biggest stories, only the biggest guests, and only the biggest opinions. This is AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. Election integrity. Election integrity. It is still a grave concern. The combination of the skullduggerous efforts by leftists to commit voter fraud, combined with state court decisions like the Nevada Supreme Court's decision the other day to allow unpostmarked mail-in ballots to be counted up to 3 days after the election.
That's ridiculous. And even if they're smudged, the postmarked smudge, they'll still count it as well.
Right. Close races, these issues matter, and they should be addressed. I mentioned this in passing yesterday, but let's get into this a little bit more. Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, the district attorney there is a woman named Heather Adams, and she announced this significant voter fraud effort that was underway there. Oh, there's no such thing as systemic voter fraud. Oh, sure, maybe one-offs. No such thing as systemic voter fraud. That's what you hear all the time. They use the word systemic. Say, oh, sure, a ballot here and a ballot there, like disenfranchising a U.S. citizen is not a big deal. But nothing systemic is ever afoot. Really?
Lancaster County detectives began investigating the voter registration applications and immediately found applications that were indeed fraudulent. Indicators of fraud included inaccuracies with the addresses listed on the applications, false personal identification information, as well as false names. A number of the applications also contained names that did not match the provided Social Security information. In some cases, applications contained correct personal identification information, such as the correct address, correct phone number, date of birth, driver's license number, and Social Security number. But the individuals listed on the applications informed detectives that they did not request the form, they did not complete the form, and verified that the signature on the form was not theirs. At this point, it is believed that the fraudulent voter registrations are connected to a large-scale canvassing operations for voter registrations that date back to June. However, the majority of the applications received are dated August 15th and after. Those canvassing for voter registrations were employed and paid to obtain voter registration applications. Thus far, of the investigations that we have completed, we have determined that 60% have been fraudulent. That is of the investigations that we've completed. We do have more to do today, and my understanding is that voter registration is still going through the box of 2,500, but should be completed sometime here today. As I said, the investigation is ongoing. We are aware of at least 2 other counties that received similar applications that are currently being investigated. At this point, we have confirmed violation of our crimes code as well as our elections code.
It's 2,500. Does that constitute a systemic? 60% of the cases that they've made a determination on so far, fraudulent. 60% of 2,500. Perhaps going on in other counties, as that district attorney mentioned. Is that systemic yet? Large scale, I think was the phrase used. In Virginia, which according to recent polling is also a battleground state, a judge just ordered Governor Glenn Youngkin to put non-citizens back on the voter rolls in violation of Virginia state law. There's a court ruling that is in violation of state law. It's sort of like what the Pennsylvania Supreme Court did in 2020. Here's Youngkin with Harris Faulkner on that decision that he is appealing directly to the Supreme Court.
Good.
Yeah, Harris, this is a stunning ruling by a federal judge who is ordering Virginia to reinstate individuals who have self-identified as non-citizens back on the voter rolls. And what's even more astounding is the vast majority of these folks had presented immigration documents confirming that they were non-citizens, and we recently had that verified by federal authorities. So here we are with a judge saying, put people back on the voter rolls who you know are non-citizens. And this is under a law in Virginia that's been in effect since 2006. It has been applied by Republican and Democrat governors alike into this 90-day period. And here we are 11 days before a presidential election, and a federal judge is ordering them back on the voter rolls. It's astounding to me that this could possibly happen. I mean, listen, common sense says non-citizens aren't on the voter rolls, but the Constitution and the law say it as well. And that's why we are immediately petitioning the Fourth Circuit for an emergency stay here on this injunction. And we will immediately go to the U.S. Supreme Court if necessary.
Obviously right. Federal judge, the circuit court, and then he's saying he would go to the Supreme Court if required. For more on all this, we're pleased to be joined by Hans von Spakovsky. He's a senior legal fellow for the Heritage Foundation, former federal election commissioner, and a former lawyer for the Department of Justice. Also the author of Our Broken Elections, How the Left Changed the Way You Vote. Hans, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Sure, Dan. Thanks for having me. By the way, the update on that Virginia story is that an appeal was filed over the weekend with the U.S. Supreme Court, and actually on Monday, 25 states filed an amicus brief with the Supreme Court supporting Virginia's position and asking the court to issue a stay of that lower court decision that was made by a Biden-appointed judge. Probably no surprise there.
I thought I saw that it had been appealed to the Supreme Court, so that clip from Youngkin was obviously from last week. But so did they just go over the Fourth Circuit, or did the Fourth Circuit decline to issue a stay?
The Fourth Circuit declined to issue a stay, but folks need to understand that because of Biden and Obama appointments to the Fourth Circuit these days is as bad, if not worse, than the Ninth Circuit, which covers California, used to be, which was always known as the most liberal court of appeals in the country. That's now the Fourth Circuit.
There you go. Let's stick on that. I mean, it's hard to know what the Supreme Court's going to do, but I mean that seems so clear cut. It would be hard for me to believe that the court, given its composition, wouldn't take this issue up.
Well, maybe, although it's just hard to tell because part of the reasoning that's being given here by Virginia is that this is too close to the election for this judge to put in an order like that. I should tell you, by the way, that the judge's order is a complete misinterpretation of the law. They're all talking about, and you see this on all the mainstream media outlets saying, oh, well, there's this 90-day deadline in federal law. They're talking about the motor voter law, national voter registration. There's this 90-day deadline that says, oh, you can't take anybody off the rolls within 90 days of the election. That is simply untrue. And the thing about this is that 90-day rule only applies to taking people off because they may have moved. In other words, somebody who was eligible when they registered to vote, but may have become ineligible because they moved. It doesn't apply to an alien who was never eligible to vote in the first place,
yeah,
or to register to vote. And in fact, by registering to vote, an alien is committing a felony under federal law. So this judge is ordering Virginia to help these aliens commit a felony under federal law by keeping them on the voter rolls.
Yeah, but all the Democrats...
Which is just bizarre.
I know, but all the Democrats here kept saying, oh, no, we're not bringing them into this country, so that they can eventually vote and become Democrats. So this whole thing was a lie and a ruse.
Well, that is true, and you can see that remember, the U.S. House, 2 months ago passed the SAVE Act, a law which simply said states have to require proof of citizenship when you register to vote. Party line vote on it. Democrats all opposing requiring any kind of proof that somebody is a U.S. citizen. Now, why would you vote against that? There's only one reason. Because you want aliens to be able to register, to vote, and to get away with it.
Yep.
Let's go to Lancaster County and this large scale, as that district attorney mentioned, illegal voter registration operation that would ultimately, the point was to turn it into a large scale illegal voting operation. And, you know, and since you've been covering this for so long and have expertise in this area, I mean, how concerned are you that what's going on in Lancaster County and perhaps a couple other counties, as she mentioned, is going on more widely?
Well, since that Lancaster County story, York County in Pennsylvania has announced the same thing, that they also have detected what they think may be literally thousands of false voter registrations, many of which were accompanied by requests for absentee ballots. And that, of course, is a huge issue and a huge problem because if a registration isn't caught, and it's put into the system, well, then it's very easy for somebody to request and submit a fraudulent absentee ballot. So that's a real problem. And look, there's another story out of Colorado, this time Mesa County, where a dozen ballots were received by election officials, and they happened to notice on some of them that the signatures didn't match. On several others, they didn't catch that there was a problem with them, other than some of the information wasn't filled out. They didn't see there was a signature problem, so they contacted three of the voters and said, "You need to come in to fix these problems on your absentee ballot you sent us." And the voters said, I didn't fill out and send you an absentee ballot. So that tells you, well, how many ballots have gotten past those election officials that they haven't caught?
Well, who's doing it? The Democrats or Republicans?
Well, I can't wait to find out. She said large-scale paid canvassers, so she knows she has her target in Lancaster County on somebody or some organization or somebody's.
That's right.
I can't wait to find out who they are. The Trump campaign in Pennsylvania, I mean, what, to your knowledge, if anything, are they doing about this?
Well, I think they've been pushing look, I haven't talked to them directly, but I have no doubt that they and the Republican National Committee have been pushing counties to be particularly vigilant in trying to detect registrations and absentee ballot requests that are fraudulent. But look, Pennsylvania doesn't have an ID requirement. Has been rejected there by the Democrats in control of the courts and elsewhere. So it's not that easy to prevent the kind of fraud we're talking about here.
Well, and Cleta Mitchell, you know, this memo that Cleta Mitchell wrote about a year ago that we've talked about a lot, and it's good to bring up again. You know, she makes the point, too, about states like North Carolina and Wisconsin that allow the use of student IDs for voting purposes. Well, foreign students are issued student IDs. You know, University of Wisconsin, North Carolina State, whatever. So that there's a whole nother area of potential fraud.
Well, unfortunately, that is also true. But, you know, folks at the New York Times and the Washington Post would say, you're just imagining things. What's going on in Lancaster County? Well, that's not really happening.
Right. There's no no systemic, right? There is systemic racism. There is no systemic voter fraud. Everything is either systemic or not systemic, depending on what their particular interests are.
Well, yeah, and, you know, whenever they say, the other word they always use is, well, there's no massive election fraud. Well, think about how many races you know of, particularly at the state and local level, that are decided by just a handful of votes. That's particularly true of city council races, school boards, often state legislative races. It doesn't take a lot of fraud to change the outcome of a race like that.
Very concerning. Hopefully, as this saying goes, the victory will be too big to rig, but very concerning heading into Election Day. I hope we get more details on what exactly the RNC and the Trump campaign are doing about some of these stories and some of these places you mentioned. Hans von Spakovsky, Senior Legal Fellow for the Heritage Foundation, former FEC Commissioner, and former lawyer for the DOJ. His book, Our Broken Elections, How the Left Changed the Way You Vote. Hans, thank you as always.
Dan, Amy, thanks for having me.
Thank you, and he joined us on our Turnkey.pro answer line.
There's only one radio show in Chicago talking about today's biggest stories and telling you what they really mean. That show is this one, Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560, The Answer.
The following is a paid political announcement.
Family, country, community. Ed Soliday has